Hi, I'm Richie Zellen, and in this lesson I want to talk and demonstrate an important detail which is crucial in helping define your style when phrasing. I am talking about articulation. Simply put, articulation encompasses all the different techniques you can employ when playing each note in a phrase. In other words, do you use slurs, hammer-ons, pull-offs? Do you play staccato or legato? Do you use dynamics? What picking technique do you use? All of these concepts can constitute your articulation when playing a phrase. And in this video, we will explore the difference between bebop and post-bop articulation as applied to the guitar. Starting now. Welcome back to the Jazz Guitar channel, and if this is your first time and you want to learn everything you can about the art of playing jazz guitar, please consider subscribing and be sure to click on the notification bell so you won't miss anything. I'm going to demonstrate the difference between bebop and post-bop articulation by playing a particular phrase in both styles so you can hear the difference. However, before I play, I'm going to give you some background as to what each style is made up of and some of the factors that led the bebop style of articulation to gradually evolve into that of the post-bop style. So let's begin. When the first jazz guitarists came on the scene, it was mainly during the swing era. Think Django Reinhardt. His articulation was very staccato, meaning that he picked the majority of the notes he played. This was natural because the electric guitar was not yet readily available, and if you wanted to be heard when you phrased, continuous slurs had to be kept at a minimum. Now, I'm in no way saying that this was necessarily pre-planned by each player. I believe that in Django's case, the acoustic Selma guitars of the day inspired him to phrase in this manner simply because it felt natural and best fit the context of the style that he played. In the mid-1940s, bebop was introduced and the electric guitar was featured in jazz probably for the first time in the hands of Charlie Christian. Here, we begin to notice a slightly more legato and horn-like style of articulation. The fact that the electric guitar sustained the notes longer, I believe enabled Christian to explore and incorporate new resources in the articulation of his notes. But in comparison to what was to come with the advent of several technical developments, decades later, the trend for most bebop jazz guitarists was to articulate their notes in a more staccato fashion. Think Barney Kessel, Tal Farlow, Jimmy Rainey, and later on maybe Joe Pass, George Benson, and Pat Martino. All of these players are representative of classic bebop articulation, at least for the most part. So, with that in mind, let me play a 2-measure phrase over a simple 1-7-4-7 progression, as in the first 2 chords of a blues. If you like, you can download a PDF with all these examples in both regular notation and tab from my website. That is jazzguitar.richiezellen.com. And for your convenience, I have placed a direct link in the info section down below. Okay, and here it goes. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here it goes slowly. 1, 2, 3, 4. So what you heard is a classic example of bebop articulation where almost every note is picked. Now let's talk about post-bop articulation. The birth of the post-bop style in the late 50s through 60s coincided with the guitar's popularity as the featured instrument in rock and roll. During the 1960s, several effects for guitars such as distortion pedals were introduced. And even though most jazz guitarists did not start using them right away, in the 70s, many new generations of jazz guitarists felt that these tools could help them articulate in a way that would allow them to phrase better in the context of the post-bop idiom. Now, the reason for this is partly because post-bop introduced wider intervals, which required more string skipping, as well as various nuances which called for the guitarist to use more legato techniques such as pull-offs, hammer-ons, and slides. So this form of articulation no longer required that the player pick every single note. Let me give you a few examples. Now, if you want to think in extreme terms, or should we say fusion, think Alan Holdsworth. Now, for a more balanced mainstream jazz approach, you might want to think John Scofield, Pat Metheny, and John Abercrombie, among so many others. But if you're wondering who was one of the first pioneers, well, it's none other than Jim Hall. He is considered the father of not only post-bop articulation on guitar, but overall post-bop phrasing, I would say. Let me play the same phrase I played previously, first featuring the clean post-bop articulation sound, and then the not-so-clean one using overdrive. Now keep in mind that this is the identical bebop phrase I played earlier, and I stress this fact because I am also trying to make a point here. There is no such thing as post-bop or modern or contemporary jazz guitar without the elements of bebop. All jazz as we know it today has at least 50%, if not more, of bebop as its foundation. Of course, there are several new melodic and rhythmic concepts that have been introduced since the bebop era, but in many cases, the only thing that may change, especially on guitar, is the articulation. So listen carefully and also notice the drastic change of fingering in contrast to that I employed in the bebop articulation. Here goes. 1, 2, 3, 4. With some overdrive. 1, 2, 3, 4. And here it goes slowly. 1, 2, 3, 4. I hope this will give you some insight on how to further develop your style by experimenting with these articulation concepts in your phrases. You know, we never stop learning, and a part of this process is to listen to other players in the style we are trying to master. And unfortunately, I can only name a few of the greats here, so I want to encourage you to recommend any favorite players in these categories that you might deem worthy to be included in everybody's further listening list. If you enjoyed this lesson and you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and be sure to click on the bell icon so you won't miss anything. Have fun and see you in the next lesson.